Hooray.
Hi again.
Hello.
Um, it is
I,
like so go ahead.
I
Dry
was gonna
and
say
cold.
it's dry and cold. Is it dry? Like inside dry or like because it
Yes, like
looks wet out.
well, outside wet, inside dry.
Yeah,
I'm like
outside wet, inside dry. The way it's supposed to be.
I know. I'm like boiling a pot of water because I feel like my skin just I think it's
What a great
reacclimating.
start. Thank you. Thank you so much for that.
Do you guys want to know what my skin condition is?
I was
No,
gonna
that's
say
so weird.
what I was gonna say is that because I've been re-recording my lecture videos, and when Zoom goes to start recording, I always wait for it to tell me that it's started recording. And so there's always like this awkward 2 seconds of a video where it starts where me just sitting there and I don't know when it actually starts the video. And so I have to just sit there with like a big smile plastered on my face. So I'm not starting the episode with my eyes closed. Like I have to like prepare myself for when Zoom starts recording.
Does that mean there's like 2 to 3 seconds of like deer in headlights? Is that what that is?
Sometimes, yeah, I've actually learned to just start talking over the woman who tells me that the recording has started.
Like catch up. Just
No,
kidding.
what can you say that? Do you have to bleep that now too?
I think I should get a certain number of bleeps per episode at this
I think
point.
that's what it makes it something PG-13, right?
I don't know. I don't know. We can Google it or ask AI or something like that. I don't know. Is it possible to be tired before a semester starts?
Yeah,
Oh,
ask a
good.
department chair. The number of emails that I've had, like, look at these prerequisites, like, look at this, look at that. I'm just like, "Ugh,"
Good.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I was fine yesterday, but then having our conference really set me back email wise. Like,
I'd like to professionally develop, but I need to answer my emails in my inbox.
it's
Sorry.
so true.
Yeah. I had a student send me an email like, hey, remember that bio thing we talked about 4 months ago? Could you fix the CRN and prerequisites? And I'm like, I don't have any memory of what you're talking about, but thank you so much for reaching out. I also got
Thanks for, I don't know what you're talking about, but thanks for reaching out. Goodbye.
yeah. Don't tell me, just thanks. I had a special moment last night where I got an email, or actually it was a Facebook message from a former student from like, and he is my age, so it shouldn't have surprised me as much as it did. But he was like, hey, my daughter just got into your college, which he attended also, and was like, I want her to be you to be her advisor, like you were my advisor. And I was like, it's
Oops.
hard for me to put into words how old that makes me feel. And also I can't, but she can come hang out with me. So, because we don't have faculty advisors anymore, we have a different system
Yeah.
now, which is fine.
Welcome to Coffee Break Classroom, brewed for higher ed. Where teaching meets good vibes. We're just two friends who love our work, our students, and more importantly, a good laugh. Here you can expect a blend of ridiculous classroom stories, a little education research, as well as some practical teaching advice. So grab your coffee, settle in. It sounds like it's going to be a good episode today.
But yeah.
So we're going to be reprising your talk today. And in the last episode, you said you were going to ask about how we felt like the conference went. So let's talk about our conference that we just had.
Yes. So I attended 3 sessions yesterday and then I took my lunch and snuck out surreptitiously. Went home. Um I
I
attended three sessions that were all about, well, one I gave and the other two, everything was about AI that I
mm,
went to. What about you? I
I only
know,
went to one AI thing.
was it mine?
Yes, it was.
What else did you see?
Oh, yeah, because we've been talking about AI. The first session I went to, I really liked. It was about like the power of belonging and just talking about belonging in the classroom. And I actually hope that we're going to be able to like bring that on for a future episode. Because
Awesome.
yeah, I felt it was good and it was a different than the belonging episode that we looked at before. So I think it's just a different context, really centered in teaching. Made me think a lot a lot of things. So I
Oh,
already have notes prepped, which is nice
you're
for
on
if
the
we
lead
ever
for
do it.
that one.
If we ever do it, yeah. Uh, and then I went to your session, which
Yep.
everybody else will hear about in a second. And
Hmm.
and then I went to the finish line game,
What's
which
that?
is from Achieving the Dream. This is something that
Oh.
Melis, our TCC coordinator, who's been on before,
Hmm.
had has done as like professional development stuff. So it's actually a game where you play as different students,
Hmm.
and you're looking at trying to basically get to the finish line, which is like through college. So there's like this little like board game that kind of snakes around, and you just like have squares. You roll a die,
Okay.
and then you read a card, and like the card is basically some sort of experience that you're having at school or outside of school that's impacting your ability to like succeed. And so it gives you like a plus or minus amount. So like you roll and like I might get a five, but then like I had a hurricane destroyed the school, and so now I have to go to it like which is a legitimate thing. Like other like
Yeah.
other schools have been destroyed by hurricanes where that not where we're from, but like so I have to go to
Thankfully.
another school which is now farther away, and it makes it harder for me to be able to like succeed. So I have like a -3. So then I have to
Interesting.
move back 3 spaces. So it was
So,
it
do
was
you have any control in your game besides spinning? I'm curious.
No, it's just rolling the die and like so there's the randomized factor, but then there's the like the rest of it is just kind of following a set of cards. So you start off with demographic information like pronouns, ethnicity, age, and basically a number of action cards. Different
Hmm.
characters have different action cards, which I thought was interesting. So there's like a number of chances that you have to basically roll and like get through stuff. Most of them
Interesting.
were like 7 to 10 cards. These cards you go through in order. Um, but what was interesting to me is that like all of the stuff on the cards had nothing to do with any of the demographic data, which is so realistic, right? Because like I was like picking,
Yeah.
we were looking at picking characters, and I was thinking I'm like, what are so I picked like just one of the I think there was a non-binary character. I think it was the only one. I decided to just kind of pick that character and I
Yeah.
wanted to play them. Um, but like nothing on there was about that. Someone was playing like a Japanese American student who then we found out by card four was in a wheelchair and like the elevator was down. So like that set
Oh,
him back like a couple squares. Or like there he was also a veteran and like there was a fire alarm that like resulted in some PTSD effects. But thankfully the college had really good counseling services, so that was actually a bonus like to kind of the
interesting.
role. So it was really interesting because it really one of them was about a student whose night section, the class in the night section got caught and they couldn't, there wasn't anything else that they could take because they have to work. And like that
Hmm.
was so real because that literally happened to me like 2 days ago and I managed to get
Oh,
the class
wow.
back. Like I fought, like it wasn't even in my department. It was another department's class that my students needed to graduate. It
Really?
had 8 students in it and it got cut at night. It was the only night section. And I was like, no, 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 no. Like this is not happening. Like I can't stand for this. So I started sending emails being like, hey, how many students is this affecting? Like what's going on? And like it was back within an hour and a half of like me starting to stir the pot. So
That's a good thing.
yeah, I was just like I managed to turn something around for a student that was just asking like, does MCC not care if I graduate? Like that was
Oh,
I know, and I was like, oh, this is really rough. So it was really interesting to just and really acknowledges all of the stuff that you and I talk about in terms of like what students go through and how to support them because most of the time it's not about what they're doing in the classroom. It's about the impact of everything else beyond just the data we have about their ethnicity and their like
yeah.
pronouns and sex and all of that stuff. So,
That life happens to all of us, and some of
yeah.
us harder than others, for sure.
And then I stayed for an hour after lunch chatting with James. So,
Good. So my first session was about using intelligence agents in your LMS, and it actually
mhm.
dovetailed really nicely with my talk then. Um, and so you can use intelligence agents. This was presented also by Malus and by Kathleen Delfonso, who is luckily one of our adjuncts as well as the University of Buffalo's adjunct in sociology. And intelligence agents are in our LMS, and they're basically ways that if a student hasn't participated, for example, in a discussion forum that is due that night at 11 or 12:59 or 11:59, it can ping a student at 4 a.m. that morning and be like, "Hey, just so you know, you have this from this upcoming due date." And so it's proactive rather than reactive, but it can also be reactive, where if you have a student who maybe failed your first exam, then you can be like, "Hey, notice this didn't go that great. I just want to remind you of these resources, and this is when you can meet me," and stuff like that. So you'll see how that dovetails. Well, you did
Yeah.
see how that dovetailed into my talk. And then my last session was actually about using AI to create case studies, which I think might be something I play with a little bit in one of my online classes, because I am. I read an article this morning today that was, I think, in the Chronicle a couple days ago, but it was
Okay.
about making your course more AI resistant, is what they called it. And so case studies, because they're so place based and they may be more I don't know. It's a little more granular than a lot of AI can
Hmm.
necessarily get. So I might try using something like that. We'll see. We'll see.
Okay.
And then I had had enough, and I went home.
That's fair. I mean, you had just gotten back from a trip, so.
I did. So Tuesday morning, my plane landed at like 1 a.m. And then Tuesday night, I was finishing the presentation that I then delivered Wednesday, which had not one, but two typos in it. I'm not sure if you saw the second one,
I did
but
not.
it's good. I quickly fixed it while you guys were working. And like the little question I had you guys, I was like, oh no, that's not how you spell that at all. So, um, but yeah, and so my talk was, oh, we didn't welcome everyone. Welcome everyone to
Well,
Coffee Break Classroom.
I
Sorry.
felt like this was a transition. No, because I was gonna wait and say like, oh, like let's get into it and then welcome
Mm,
everybody. So
perfect. Seamless. Well done.
yeah, seamless, perfect. Like it was planned the whole time.
Totes. Totes. um, so yeah, the research that I delivered yesterday was the result of we have our TCC has been lucky for the past many years to have a small pot of money for instructional development stipends. And so
Hmm.
it's kind of is a much smaller scale version of what Dave was talking about, Dave Gadou, when he was here talking about AI, when he said that his college put away $100,000 as like a play with AI and tell us what works and what doesn't work.
Yeah.
And this is a much smaller pot of money, but it still is like, tell me some innovative projects that you're working on or you'd like to work on, and you need a little funding over the summer when you're off contract to do. So I've been fortunate. I think this might be the third one I've gotten. And half the time it's because I would do the projects anyway. Like whether or not they were funded, it was just they're important projects to do.
Yeah, I feel that.
Yeah. So, and it was specifically tied to a class that I took last spring called Action Research. And so, action research is the idea that the teacher can actually take on the role of researcher in their own class. And it's a little bit messier than like classical research, where you have the researcher coming from outside
Hmm.
and performing the treatment and kind of making observations as a very sort of external person. And then, analyzing feedback. Uh,
Yeah.
this idea is the idea that everything's happening, it's kind of messy and simultaneous. So, like, you notice that something is wrong in your class or something could be better. Maybe you want to improve something about your practice. Maybe you want to
Hmm.
improve efficiency. Maybe you're looking to make some sort of like transformational change in your class, because action research is really tied to social transformation, very much.
Yeah, it's that what we talked about in our last video. It's that reflection on the informal learning and then the iterative process
Mm-hmm.
that comes with it, right? The thing basically something that we all do as educators when we're trying to like make class work better.
Yes. And your students are like your stakeholders as well. So they're
Yeah.
part of it because you're getting feedback from your students kind of as you're iterating. And so I think that exactly what you just said, that I think a lot of faculty do this anyway, but don't either A, formalize it, or B, kind of see themselves as like researchers,
Hmm.
because they, like we said last episode, a lot of it feels very much like an informal learning environment where you're trying
Right.
things to see what works.
Right. You don't have that formal training, so it's like I can't say that I'm like a researcher because I don't know anything about research and I never
That's
took a class. Yeah.
I'm certainly not an educational researcher, right? I have a degree in X that is not educational
Right.
research.
Right.
But yeah. So, to give you so this is the example that I used, where I teach online. My physical geology class is a lecture
Hmm.
lab class. It's primarily a general education class, and so I have students from all walks of life and all different parts of their educational journey in there. We've taught it. I've taught it myself for like 22 or 23 years, and I also have taught it face to face. I've taught it fully online. I've taught it remote during COVID. I've taught it. Now I teach it in a shorter form, like an 11 or 12 week session and it's a late start class. So
Hmm.
one of the things that I think is curious is that what we call late start is not what like academics really consider, or like the literature considers late start.
Oh,
Um,
interesting.
yeah, so it's interesting. So the CCRI is the Community College Research Institute, and they have a lot of language about like you should have shortened classes for students because of exactly what you just said with your board game, is that things will happen that will derail a student's semester. So if
Hmm.
you teach classes in shorter chunks, there's less time for those life events to happen.
Hmm.
And so it should correlate to higher success rates because they don't have as long to forget things. They don't
Yeah.
have as long for things to mess up in
It's a
their
lot
like.
easier to miss 5 week chunks than it is to then miss like a week and then be out for 15.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And so a lot of the literature, though, when they talk about late start classes, they're really talking about compressed classes and they're talking about summer classes. And they have very high success rates, for a variety of reasons, right? You've taught over the summer. Do you find that your students over the summer, how do you think about their performance?
I mean, I'm a different type of I it's hard for me to talk about like standard stuff when I feel like I do stuff differently, but
Hmm.
I end up over the summer getting a lot of students from other institutions. So
Yeah.
like they mostly are like there to get it done type
Yep.
situation.
Yep.
Or oftentimes they failed the class in the previous semester and
Hmm.
need to retake it. So they've already got a little bit of that content understanding and there may be a little bit of a ways up, but need it to get done so then they can go back in the fall and be on track.
Right. Yeah. Um, absolutely. And so like I end up at the end of a summer session assigning a lot of A's at the end of the semester,
Yeah.
for a lot of the reasons that you just said. And by and large, if you look at the literature, summer classes across the board have really high success rates. And
It
so
is it is
yeah,
easier when you're like teaching something. It's like, remember what we talked about yesterday for two
yesterday,
hours? Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, for sure. So what I started noticing when I was teaching 101 late start, which by the way filled immediately, like we have, so sometimes we've done it where we don't even open the late start until the classes start running. Like we wouldn't even
Sure.
open it and then typically within 2 or 3 weeks the class is full. And the reason for that is, I think, multiple. I think there's multiple reasons for that. I think that you have students who started a class they don't want to take, and so they are like, what is available? And then
Hmm.
I think the more common answer is that students didn't have like all their paperwork in order,
Hmm.
and they haven't registered before classes start, and now it is like what's left.
Yep.
And so typically the students who don't have all of their stuff in order beforehand, there's a couple of reasons for that. FAFSA may ask for a lot of extra verification, especially if they've moved around a lot, which are typically
Hmm.
financially disadvantaged students, right?
Hmm.
And then also students who weren't sure that they were going to go to college. So not like a well-formed plan. Students who have been paying off a bill from last semester. So again,
Can't
financially
register
just
yet.
yes, exactly. So there's a lot of reasons, and most of them aren't like great reasons. Sometimes the student at the end of the semester will just be like, or sometimes students will start at a college and it's not a good fit for them for whatever
Hmm.
reason, and they're like, I need to go to I need to come back home, right?
Yeah,
So I was assigning tons of Fs. Like this was just my own observation as I was
just for fun.
just for fun. I was like, you get an F and you get an F. I did that yesterday too.
Yeah,
So
I know you did. It was a highlight.
oh, God.
It's all downhill from here.
It is. That was the high point. So so I was like, what's going on? And
Hmm.
so I think it's important as an instructor when you think that you're right about something that you pause and check because sometimes you have like recency bias and things like that, right? So I came up with four questions that I wanted to ask, and then the college funded me to answer.
Yeah.
And then the first one was, "Am I right? Are my success rates, which I define as C or better, for student success, because that's what our students need to transfer,
Yep.
and in many cases, that's what they need to move to the next sequential course.
Yep.
So." Were my full semester students doing appreciably better than my late start students? Um, were these changes, how were different groups of students impacted differently by full semester versus late start? What is the connection between their starting GPA and how they did in my class? And then, is this a physical geology phenomenon, or do these disparities exist beyond my course? Because when I looked, I saw that we had over 130 late start classes at the college. And
That's a
so
lot.
it is, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that
So,
that's definitely more classes than I just have in my department. So
yeah,
yeah.
right. Because they fill, like that's the thing.
Hmm.
So we are going to run them regardless. So if we're going to run them regardless, because to community colleges, like enrollment equals dollars that we can
Yeah.
then use for everything, right?
Yeah.
So
So
yeah.
what happened when you started looking into this with your research questions?
So
Right? Yeah. Were
first,
you right?
oh, always the question. So I used AI to answer all these research questions, just to be clear.
Okay.
And I played around with a few of them and I ended up using Gemini. I found that Gemini for me and for what I was asking for it to do was the best fit. And so I went with that. And first question, am I right? And the answer obviously is yes.
Oh, we
So,
all know that.
right? So my full semester, and I used somewhere in the order of like I don't know, 5 or 6 semesters of data. That my full semester class, 30% higher C or better rate than my late start class. So yeah, big
How
difference.
many how many students is that overall that you were looking at?
So in my full semester, I had 300 students roughly that I
Okay.
was looking at. And in my late start, I had about 150.
Okay, okay.
So yeah, so big enough that you could see
It's
trends.
big data. Yeah,
Yeah,
100%.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then the question was, do these disparities exist across different groups differently? And the answer is yes, which I assumed, but you again want to check and you want to know for whom and how. So I looked at race and ethnicity, I looked at sex, I looked at Pell eligibility, which is sort of an analog for financial disadvantaged students. And then I looked at first generation students, like what
Hmm.
students are having a hard time just kind of navigating the college environment and jargon and stuff like that. Um, and
Since
I,
we're
yeah.
can't since we're not looking at any of your big I gotta talk, so I gotta throw some questions in there, right? Because otherwise
Hell yeah.
I'm trying
Otherwise,
to
I'm
save your
just
voice.
giving the same talk.
Yeah, right.
Yes.
I
Yes.
it's like so we're now I forgot what my question was. Darn it.
So I was talking about the different groups that I was looking at.
Yeah, I was gonna basically ask like so how you talked a lot about and showed a lot of graphs yesterday and about how
I
you were kind
did.
of interacting with AI to be able to get these types of things. So
Yes.
I think like before we what were the big pictures, right? What were your big takeaways from this, right? Because that's what we're looking for. And then like
Yep.
how did AI help kind of iterate that process?
Great. So my big takeaways were that all of the things that you think would impact students, for the most part, impacted students.
Yeah.
So, but it didn't just impact one or two groups, it almost impacted everyone.
Yeah.
So, for example, for see or better rates by ethnicity, every demographic, except for my Hispanic students, which I have a small number of Hispanic students, every demographic, my Black, white, Asian, unknown, Native American, Pacific Islander, multicultural, everyone was negatively impacted when I looked from full semester to late start, except for my handful of Hispanic students.
Which is wild to think that
Wild.
like the late start is just generally mm, worse for students.
For like, for it's worse for women, it's worse for men,
Yeah.
it's worse for Pell eligible, it's worse for not Pell eligible,
Right.
it's worse for first generation, it's worse for not first generation. Everybody, pretty much. And I was like, oh no. So what was interesting is that although again every group did worse,
Yeah.
um, that when you broke it down by gender in the full semester course, females did better, and in the shorter course, males did better, even though they still did worse than they did in the full semester. So that was kind of an interesting observation. We
Yeah.
could make all sorts of guesses about why that was, but that's what it is. We don't know. That's because it's just a
Yeah.
quantitative study.
Right. 100%. Because like what this makes me think of is just like what's going on for those students. And like we had already touched on a little bit that all of the reasons that students are getting into late start courses,
Yes.
um, which is very interesting. I Yeah, it makes me wonder about the end too. Like, do you just have a higher percentage of like Pell eligible students in your late start class? I don't think that was something that you had
I
looked
didn't
at.
actually look at that. That's a good question.
I mean, we know everyone's
Yeah.
doing worse, which is fine.
Yes,
Like we see that. So there's
we
not
do.
really a particular reason, but if some of our hypotheses are that like students are taking late start because of maybe some of these financial reasons,
Yep.
right? Like what then we would probably be able to see that.
This is true. This is true. So then I asked AI to make me, so I very iteratively asked AI, like, hey, I want to run some data analytics. Show me see or better rates by ethnicity. Show me
Hmm.
see or better rates by sex. Show me see or
Yep.
better rates by. So
And
very
politely
iteratively.
asked.
I did. So yeah, that was so I always use the word please when I ask AI to do something because when my robot overlords rise up to take over, I want them to remember how polite I am.
I think my favorite one was you doing that and then getting a couple slides later and then seeing you tell AI, "This is great. Can you also do this?" Like,
I wanted to remember that I'm polite and validated. Please don't kill me. For real though. It's listening. So then I asked it to create a heat map, which was actually, this was a cool point.
hmm
Um, so I asked it to make a heat map of all of the risk factors for students in my late start class.
hmm
And it made this heat map and it was beautiful. And I had this moment where I was like, oh my God, this tool is amazing. This is like the future. And then I was like, I should like look at what this heat map says.
hmm
And I looked at the heat map and I brought this up yesterday that I was like just staring at this red block that said that my for Asian students who are not Pell eligible but are first generation that they had a success rate of 0%. And I was like, that's weird because so much research talks about how that doesn't make any sense. So I
Yeah.
took a walk and I walked away from it for a while. And on my walk, I like, and this is where I think the role of you as the human is really important
hmm
in AI. I was like,
Any data analysis.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. Or I walked away and I was like, how many non-Pell eligible first generation Asian students do I even have? So I asked AI to make me a data table of this heat map, and it did, and I had one. I had
The end
exactly one.
numbers. You grabbed the end numbers.
I
Yeah, you
grabbed
just
the
had
N
one
numbers.
student who was not good at geology.
Yes, it didn't
Just
work
kidding.
out
There were plenty
for
of
my
other reasons, I'm sure, but one student who it didn't work out for.
one student where it didn't work out. And so then I was like, okay, all right. So then I asked it, hey, I looked at the breakdown of ends
Hmm.
across different buckets because now I have tons of buckets, right? Because now I'm
Right.
dividing students in a ton of different ways. And I said, all right, well, make me another heat map, but only make it for buckets of students that have more than five students.
Yeah. So this is where like AI was successful. And like one of the things that I'm watching you do this and making these heat maps and like with AI, and can you guess at what my thought was?
No, I don't know what are you gonna say.
I could do this with Excel.
Oh,
Like,
I know you can do it with Excel.
no, I know, but I was just like, I could do this with Excel like so easily. Like, it's just the pivot table stuff that I showed you how to do that one
I know, but
time.
it was so fast.
That was my point, is it was
Yeah.
very fast. And then to be able to ask it to do the same thing, but don't include values if it's less than five, that takes so much more manual
Right.
labor in an Excel
Mm-hmm.
file that like the AI did for you in a second or
Yes.
12.
Or yes, it was about 12. I used it on fast mode, but I don't pay for any of the AI services, so I should say that I used four. I played with four before I landed on using Gemini. I used Copilot, ChatGPT, Claude, and then ultimately used Gemini 3.
Mhm.
And had found out it was the best overall experience for me. So when I said no buckets of smaller than five students, the amount of stuff to look at on my heat map just melted away. And then I
Yeah.
was only looking at white, black, and Hispanic students
Hmm.
because those were the only students that I had any great number in. And there, what stood out was my Black African American students were really struggling. My poor white students were struggling as well.
Right.
Once again, Hispanic students crushing it, just crushing it. So
To
I,
be fair, I remember the values from your N heat map, and I think there were eight of them too.
there
So
were
like
only eight,
it's
but
yeah.
they were eight strong
Yeah, yeah,
students
yeah.
in a sea of students who were struggling. So
Come back in 3 years and we'll dump all of that data in.
perfect. Exactly. Yes. So then when I had this is where I told AI, this is great. Can you make me a heat map for my full semester class? And what was wild was watching, and I did this intentionally where you saw how much red and orange, which
Hmm.
correlated to low values, just turned to like this sea of green for the most part. And you saw that in the full semester class, that almost all of my buckets of students were doing appreciably better.
Hmm.
So that just kind of reaffirmed where I started with, right? Um, for me, where go ahead.
No, I was going to jump to the next topic, but
Yeah.
if you, yeah,
For me, what where things and this is where had I finished this data analysis, I would have been more composed yesterday when I got to this part because when I did the analysis, my third research question was then to say, well, how does incoming GPA impact
yeah,
student performance, right? And I had AI make a graph comparing their GPA when they were coming in to their course success. And it
hmm
was like almost a one-to-one
hmm
graph, which indicates that the higher GPA you come in with, the more likely you are to, or the more likely you are to succeed in the class.
yeah,
Um,
which I thought was really interesting and like
yes.
also upsetting. Like,
Yes. That's what I mean.
yeah, because it almost, and thinking more about it since yesterday, right? Like it almost speaks to a level of preparedness with skills that are
Yep.
necessary to succeed
Yes.
because you have a demonstrable like use of those in other classes if you have a higher
Yes.
GPA. Yeah.
And it like crushed me a little on the
Hmm.
inside because well, yesterday I very inarticulately was like, nothing we do matters. If they come in prepared, it's going to go great. And if they come in and they don't have everything lined up for them because they didn't before, they probably still aren't going to have their things lined up for them. And that
Yeah,
is
I
disheartening.
was I was really disheartening, and then just looking at the way that it kind of kept going and thinking about like that what that means is
Yes.
that we have students that are coming in with averages less than a 2.0,
Yep.
like GPAs less than a 2.0, and just aren't able to dig themselves out of the hole. And I'm
Yep.
just like, huh.
Yes. I think it's important, and I forgot to mention this, that I also use equitable grading strategies in this class.
That was what I wrote that note down because I was going to ask because I'm like, even after all of that, right? Like,
Yes.
yeah,
So the equitable grading strategies that I use in this class are very, very generous, flexible deadlines, and also minimum grading, where if a student doesn't submit an assignment, they get a 50% on it, or if they earned less than a 50% on the assignment, I bump it to 50%.
I actually have some questions that I think it might be worth running to then maybe make yourself feel a little bit better about this data.
Okay.
Because the chart that you were looking at was just success rate versus
Mm-hmm.
incoming GPA.
Yep.
But like you don't, I think it's possible to go in there and be able to get an N for each of those. Because even though like it's saying that students coming in with less than a 2.0 are like statistically, I think you had like 12% success rate, right?
8.
8% success rate for students coming in with less than a 2.0. Like,
Yes.
how many students is that actually, though? Like, is one of the questions that I
It's
had
true.
because it might just be 12, 20%, 12% of your population that has an 8% chance of success. So that's something worth, I think, looking
Teasing
at.
out a little bit.
hmm
Yeah.
If you can have AI put the N number next to each data point on your
Oh, for
graph,
sure. That'd
yeah,
be easy.
do it
That's
right
true.
now. Just kidding. We just
Everyone just get a cup of coffee. We'll be right back. Um, yeah. So you just alluded to like another big point, and that is then I had AI actually make graphs of like your on the x-axis was what their final grade was in the class, and I mapped it to
Mm,
what their incoming GPA was.
you're
And
right.
yeah, and what I saw was in my late start class is that basically almost no one with less than a 2.0. It's like actually in both classes,
Yeah.
but it was more pronounced in the late start class, which is where more students were coming in with
Yep.
under a 2.0
Yep.
GPA.
Which is super interesting. And I do actually remember that you also did plot it with the individual students being points on your graph and being
Yes.
able to see the trends there. So that does actually
Yes.
give you a sense of how many students.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert, not many. So,
Enough, like
and
to where it's still concerning. But like,
yes. Oh,
yeah,
for sure. For
yeah.
sure.
Because we want our students to succeed. And I will say, like, it's not just you and your late start classes. I definitely
Right.
have had students come into physics who have like lower GPAs and then just kind of like will disappear like
Yeah.
for whatever reason and like you
Right.
can't do anything about it.
You can't do anything when they don't come back. That's
Yeah.
it, right? So when I look to see, all right, so it didn't actually matter if they took the full semester or the late start class.
hmm
GPA was by and large the biggest indicator of their opportunity for success. So I said, okay, so then clearly the students within the late start class have to have a lower GPA coming in. And they do. By point like 0.75 for GPA. So like a whole letter grade. So my students who took the full semester class came in average GPA of 2.99, late start class 2.28. Um, and then I found that in the late start, like you just said, if you came in with above a 2.0, you have a 70% chance of success. And if you came in, oh, and this is something that someone at the end of the meeting came up and told me I was interpreting this incorrectly. So I'm sorry to the statisticians out there if I am making a misinterpretation. I'm using the wrong words. Um, if you came in with less than a 2.0 GPA, your chances of earning a C or better were 8%, which is gross. And then we had this long conversation because um, one of our AVPs was in the room and he pointed out the 2.0 is our cutoff for SAP, which is
Yep.
our satisfactory academic progress, which
Yep.
so students who have a GPA of under 2.0 are students who would be already on academic probation
Yep.
or restriction or warning. So things are already not going well for those students. Um, and one of the things that I saw very clearly was that my Black and African American students were really struggling in my late start class. When I looked, they had an incoming GPA of 2.13. So, lots of risk
On
factors.
average.
Yes, on average.
Yeah.
Actually, I'm sorry. That was the full semester. That was the full semester. They came in with a GPA of 2.13. In the late start, they came in with an overall GPA of 1.61. So, yeah. There was a 20% increase in Pell eligibility from full semester to late start. But the summation is not hard to read, and that is that a short, fast time frame for students entering with a lower GPA and higher financial need is not ideal.
That actually makes sense.
It makes so much sense, right?
Like if you're already struggling academically, to just do something faster and like learn more all at once is
Yes.
probably a challenge.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I did actually, I asked AI for a bunch of suggestions um for what to do with students in my late
Hmm.
start class. And then I picked and chose ones that I thought made sense for my role, and not only just for me, but like things we could do as an institution. So strategic advising, although honestly, like I almost think that this is a moot point, right? Because if students are registering for late start classes, it's because they didn't get in for advisement earlier or they didn't get all their
Hmm.
paperwork in earlier. So
Yep.
that isn't necessarily useful. I do think late start students would benefit from having like some sort of a chat bot where they could get immediate answers to questions. So that's something I'm going to work on. I keep hedging my bets. I'll get to it soon. I have to make everything ADA compliant. So, but what I do want to do is I want to take some of those intelligence agents that I learned about in my first session
Yeah.
and embed that into messages that I send to students who either aren't getting their work in on time or aren't doing well on assessments. And that is use them to not only let them know about our tutoring services
Hmm.
and but also like all the other services that have nothing to do with class, like um, our food pantry or our homelessness liaison or our emergency assist for emergency funding, like the resources that those students actually really desperately sometimes need.
Yeah, because like it's oftentimes not about what's going on in the classroom, and I think that's kind of
Yes,
a big takeaway. Yeah.
it is. It is. And then also what I think the college could do for us is give us a list of students at the start of the semester. They could just do it on our class rolls, right? We could have like a little asterisk next to students who are entering our classes with like less than a 2.0 GPA so that we would know from the jump these are students who we want to proactively reach out to because they're at risk.
Yeah, I can see how that would be helpful.
And it wouldn't be like hard to do, I don't think.
Yeah, I'm thinking with the advising stuff too, like because going back to that, you're like it might you had said that it might not really be anything we can control because these students are registering later, and I'm just like if we have them identified and they're on a list for our advisors, like that's where that can be a little bit more intrusive is the word that they've been
Yep,
using, right?
absolutely. So then my last research question was when I was like, is this just a geology 101 thing? And at first I was like aghast, and then I pulled it out of the the dump. So I looked at Psych 101. One of my very good friends, it used to be the department chair of Psych 101, and I asked if I could play with her data. One of the things I didn't talk about was how many months it took me to get this data and how I
Yeah.
basically harassed my institutional research office for a long time until I kind of rose in priority and I never really got to the top. It was more that the provost was like, are there things that you could use that I could help with? And I'm like, yes, yes, please. Um, so
I
we're
want a dashboard
that's what I'm
like for my
saying.
department. Yeah.
Yes. Um, and I think that now that we all have access to AI, I think the risk is that you'll have people who don't really know how to interpret some of the data,
Hmm.
like my n=1 example with my heat map. But I do think it's like empowering to play with your own data if you want to, and it would take such a load off of institutional research. I don't know. I guess maybe there's some training they could send us to and then give us our data or something. I don't
Mm.
know. I don't know.
Yeah, I heard something because we got a bunch of data for our departments about our programs, and we actually
Hmm.
had meetings with the program assessment and like
Yeah.
whatever that is now. Who knows what everything is called anymore? Um,
It'll be reorg
yeah,
next week or whatnot.
exactly. We had our data, which, by
Cool.
the way, the graduation rates that they had went through like 2023. And the like demographic data went through fall of 2024. And I'm like, this is not helpful. Like it's a 5 year
Well,
time frame ending then. And I'm like, I can't make any sort of trends out of this because it's not recent and half of it's
yes.
COVID.
Well, that's very true. Yes, COVID data is not real data. So we uh we use like a 3-year graduation rate. That's
I
why.
know,
Yeah,
I
I know.
know, I know, I understand it, but I'm just like, our department secretary gets me better data faster than than any
I
of this, and
know.
I want to play around with it. I want
And
some data.
yeah, I know. And
But
I want to give credit to institutional research because we
yes,
are in the middle of reaccreditation and
they do a lot.
they do a ton and they are always
Uh,
short-staffed.
but what I was going to say is that they mentioned that they might be bringing back the data champions thing,
Oh,
which
that's
would allow
cool.
us to do that. Yeah.
That is cool. Yeah, I find it super empowering to play with my own data and to ask questions because to go back and forth with IR, like I was able to go back and forth with AI. I mean, it would have taken months, and because they're overworked, and this took me an afternoon.
Yeah, I can't even imagine being a faculty member being able to just access data like that. Like I would love to
Right,
be like in my for my own classes.
right.
100% I want to look at that.
Yes.
Yeah, but now is like a department chair. I'm just like I need to look at that. Like
Yeah.
I need to look at all of
Let's
it.
make it happen.
Yeah, that sounds good to me.
So anyway, when I looked at my Psych 101, not my Psych 1, but the Psych 101 data, I saw two interesting things. And the first is that there was not a big disparity between their full semester and their late start. It was like 4 or 5%, not
Hmm.
30 like I had.
Hmm.
Um, but then also their success rates were like way lower than mine. So my full semester course had a C or better rate of like 77%. And
Hmm.
there's both of their numbers hovered around 50. So I felt better about they know that. They've been like
Yeah.
revising and playing with like 101 forever. Um and in general, they had similar trends between their full semester and their late start, but they were just not as extreme as mine.
Yeah.
Um, but what I and so first I was like, damn it, is it me? Am I the problem? Like, and so then I ran it through like well, let's take all the psych students' incoming GPA and plot it against their grades. And it was like almost identical
Hmm.
to my own data. And that is that there's like a 1-to-1 correlation between what your incoming GPA is and what you earn in the class. And to the point where like their numbers were almost identical to mine. In fact, the first one was that if you have a GPA of 2.0, you have a 70% chance of getting a C or better. And if you have under a 2.0, I had 8%, they had 12%.
Yeah.
And so our class is different. No, I just had more like students with lower GPAs in my late start class. So
Yeah, it was really interesting. It was
yeah.
interesting to see all the graphs that AI put together. I was
Yeah.
a little annoyed it kept changing the color scheme.
Yes, that was
Um,
so annoying.
like you have to feed it the colors in your prompt so that it,
I
yeah.
I will learn from that. Absolutely. Um but yeah, I think that like we can think of AI almost as a research partner, but it's only as smart as the questions you ask it. I
I don't
think.
even think it's a partner. I think it's a program. Like it's no
Yeah.
different than like running stuff through a calculator or Excel,
Yep.
right? Like you could I there's pivot tables in Excel that could do the same stuff, and that's all you're doing is just asking AI to run the program for that.
Are pivot tables the part of Excel that resonate for you?
No,
What is then? Are there other parts of Excel that resonate for you?
that resonate with me.
Yes.
Good grief. I had a real I can't believe I'm answering this question. I'm justifying this question with a response. There's
Very good, very
there's
good.
a very fun add-in that you can do for Excel, which is a data solver
Okay.
that I added a whole lab about. It allows you to basically solve like systems of equation, find max and mins. It's like optimization problems from calculus, but like
Okay.
Excel does all the math for you. So
Oh
it's
wow, that's
very
very
fun to
cool.
just be able to throw in a function and be like, what's the maximum value and where does it occur? Or to have a problem where you are making a box
Uh-huh.
and like you have the height of the box and it's got a square base and then the height and you want to maximize the volume for the least cost of the material and like being
Mm-hmm.
able to kind of play around with those types of things and do that in Excel is very fun. But
Oh, it sounds fun.
as a physicist, I think the regular old graphing trend line stuff, that's what I use Excel for all the time.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I took a class once called isotope geology where you
Hmm.
had to iterate like 1,000 times because you were using basically doing calculus and you
Hmm.
had to converge on a value. And that is the most high-tech thing I've ever done in Excel. Everything else is just pretty simple line plots for the most part for me,
Yeah,
but
true. My grade books in Excel are phenomenal after I started teaching this class because I like got picked up so much stuff.
I bet that's
Data's
true.
fun, but all the graphs I make a bunch of graphs based on my grades. So like
That's cool.
um I look at grades versus like original version versus retake, and then I can kind of see the jumps that students made on graphs.
Yeah.
I have all of those pre-built in, so as my grades get filled out, as I type them in, it automatically
Oh,
populates.
that's a beautiful thing. It's
Yeah,
like
it's very
magic.
nice. It's automated. I have so much of it automated.
That's great.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the end of the day, I now have a couple avenues that I'm going to explore, and that's what action research is. So I learned some stuff. I'm going to try some stuff and see how it works, and then ask the
Yeah.
students how it works. Um, and we'll see. We'll see. As always, research is to be continued. I almost said TBC, but who says TBC?
Nobody, it's
Nobody.
TBT. This is,
TBD. That's right. That I was like
yeah.
TBC sounds wrong.
As well as our podcast, TB
CB.
continues.
Oh my God. Thanks, guys.
Bye.
I don't even know what we're talking about next, but you should come back and find out. Bye.